So hey friends, welcome to this week's video. This week we're doing a little bit more mobile stuff because I am in my hometown of Seattle, but I don't have all my gear with me. So I'm doing a lot of mobile recording here, so bear with me with that while we figure it out. But I do have a microphone and all that other stuff to sort of help with this. However, we are gonna do this more vloggy style or like a day in the life in terms of use cases because I don't have, all the proper lighting. I don't have all my microphones. So I'm gonna try to be a little bit creative to get you guys what you need from this video. Anyway, this week we are going over the Koss KPH30Is. I know we kind of teased this in our live stream with the Koss Porta Pros, but because I need to get a review out this week because I have another one coming up next week, I wanted to make sure that I had something that I could easily transport and that I could easily, move around with. That won't be too invasive in terms of the review. So these are the guys. I did get the clear versions and I've been rocking with these for a little bit, but I will be rocking these all the way through this entire trip, which will involve who knows what. But bear with me, here are the stats on what these guys are. The KPH30Is have a solid microphone, which I'm talking about first because I will be recording most of this review with the onboard mic on these headphones. Look for this indicator on the top left of the screen to know when I'm using it versus when I'm using another microphone that I have on me. While the cabling on the microphone is a little thin, the cabling towards the termination is much more solid with thicker cabling and spring reinforcements. I went with the clear aesthetic because it gives you the contrasting ear cup internals, and to me it has a nice little charm about them. The clears also seem to have a smoother sliding mechanism for the headband adjustment, which the white and beige versions did not. The headband uses a flexible silicone feeling headband that suspends the headphone off your head and keeps it away from the plastic. This makes the headphone feel extremely weightless, even more weightless than they already are. And lastly, the ear cups have no swivel to them. However, there are some rubber joints in the connectors to allow for some movement. And the overall headphone is very flexible, so you shouldn't have any worry about it being too rigid or unforgiving on the fit. So now you guys have a rundown of what comes in the box. Let's talk about my flight, because I did just take a 6-hour flight from Boston to Seattle and got a really good listen in on these. From the comfort perspective, I will say that these don't clamp terribly bad. I did not need to take this off the entire time. That suspension headband is extremely nice and it keeps all that pressure off the top of your head. So if you're bald, this is gonna be great. Obviously not like an Alcantara setup, but that band is still comfortable, I would imagine, still, even if you are bald. In terms of clamping force, not as bad as the Porta Pros. It's actually pretty light and I didn't really feel any fatiguing even though it is an on-ear design. So overall, extremely impressed from that perspective. And then from the open ear perspective, there's just like a lot of benefits from that as well. It being open ear, obviously you don't get that cabin pressure that you might get from other headphones, especially ones that have ANC in them, as well as you don't get overheating issues because your ears are exposed, they get to breathe, and yeah, like it's just not something where you'll feel stuffy, you'll feel overheating or anything like that. I actually got a lot more pleasant experience flying with these than I normally do with my Sonys, where I overheat and I feel like fussy and all this other stuff. So it was a pleasant surprise. Obviously, with its open back nature, there are some concerns about audio leakage and sound quality in an airplane, and yeah, they will leak. So if you are, I usually get away with these 60-70% for most of the recordings I'm listening to, but if I want extra punch, I probably go to 80-90%. And again, that's gonna really depend on your phone or if you're using an amp. For most of what I needed to, my phone did fine with just the dongle to amp these. It shouldn't be anything special. I guess if you really wanted to get beyond that 101 decibel, you could get an amp to get further beyond that and maybe get a little bit more punch out of your setup. But for me, the regular dongle works perfectly fine and I didn't really have any issues.
there were certain times where I wanted to pump it up, and I think that's where people started realizing that like the little noises they were hearing were coming from me. But the leaking isn't terrible, especially at 67%. I don't think it's terribly noticeable, especially with people doing things, as, just the overall sounds inside the airline cabin. Nothing's gonna really bother them, but then I think like at 90, I think people started realizing that I was using a retro pair of headphones. So I think that's just something to keep in mind as you use these in your day-to-day. But we'll test that more when I walk around Seattle. And then finally, in terms of the sound, which was something that was the most surprising to me, they isolated pretty well. I thought these would suck and I would hear everything, but I was still able to get locked into my music. I was still able to watch movies. It was great. I mean, obviously you do hear sounds, you do hear babies, you still hear like everything, like in terms of people's voices and stuff like that. But in terms of like white noise from the plane, I actually didn't notice that at all. Really, all I noticed was voices coming through, but the white noise was pretty much like zoned out by the music or movies. From a sound perspective, this is where I kind of noticed something. And again, I'll have to test a little bit more, but music was beautifully fine. I'll do a section at the end of this video around my music thoughts on these, but overall music was really great. It was very balanced. It was working across all the genres. I didn't need to tune anything. I didn't need to, skip songs because they sucked. They all sounded good. Where I did find myself kind of switching to my in-ear monitors is when I was watching anime or watching a movie. There was just some lack of crispness in the voices. Everything else sounded good, like in terms of action and things like that. It's just missing certain elements in speech, as well as like quieter moments where I just feel like it wasn't as defined and it wasn't as deep. And I think maybe this is making me think that this isn't great for movies, but it's great for music. So overall, it's my first impression, just going through that flight, but we're gonna do more things in Seattle. So let's see what we think. Looking around a little bit in Seattle, it's not that bad. It's a hot day, so the open ear is nice because you get a little bit of ventilation that you wouldn't normally get on over ears, but you still get enough isolation where things aren't really bothering you. You do still get that situational awareness, so you're safe, but I don't mind it at all. And obviously you guys are getting a little bit of taste of what this microphone sounds like, but yeah, let's keep walking.
So walking around was actually a breeze once I got past the acclimation period. I haven't been using wired headphones or wired IEMs outside of my house, so I got caught up sometimes in reaching for my phone or reaching for my wallet, and I just had to get used to having a cable there because I'm used to having wireless headphones. However, once I figured out how to maneuver it, I really realized that the length of the cable at 4 feet is pretty ideal. It allows you to put it in your back pocket, it allows you to snake it through your arm, it allows you a lot of different configurations so that the wire is not too over cumbersome in terms of overall length, but it also allows you to have some flexibility in arrangement. In terms of the headphones themselves, obviously they're very striking looking. They're definitely unique. I got a lot of different comments about them on the street, whether they've either came up to me and asked me about them or just like passing comments, because obviously these are open back, so I definitely could hear some of the comments happening. But again, you might get less talks about the non-clear versions, but for these ones, definitely an eye catcher, so be wary about that. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, I love how easy these are to just throw in my bag. I don't have to really worry about them because, one, they're $20, so they're easy to replace, but they just are flexible and they can take a beating, so don't worry about haphazardly throwing in your bag if you're in a rush, because they can take that.
Alright, so new day. We're going to test these out a little bit more, but sort of a more active day to see if these actually hold up beyond just listening. So, of course, we're out here in Gasworks Park. I'm gonna jump rope like I normally do when I come home. So, let's check it out. Alright, let's talk about that workout then. Let's just get a good view for you guys. That's light and decent. I think this should work. Anyway, that workout worked out pretty well. I was surprised by how well that didn't bother me. I was expecting a tremendous issues with the fit because I was thinking maybe it's clamp down and really suffocate my ears and that the headband would move, but it really stayed locked in nicely. It didn't really adjust for myself. I could run, I could do hit, I could do jump roping, I could do whatever, and it stayed in the setting that I put in. So it's definitely a lot more secure headband than the Porta Pros. In terms of the overall clamping force, it stayed very comfortable. I didn't really notice it throughout my headphone or throughout my workout if it wasn't for the cable. And again, if you long you hide that cable, then it's good. In terms of the phone, that was my biggest concern. I have a huge phone. I don't have like an iPod Shuffle like I used to have back in the day, but it worked as long as the pocket was secure. Tried this with my sweatpants in the morning, it just wasn't staying in, it was moving around a lot, but with my back pocket, it's tight enough where I really didn't feel it through burpees or jumping jacks or push-ups or anything, so it was pretty good. I think the only issue that I had to do is take it out for sit-ups and things like that, because just it's smacking my phone when doing leg lifts and things like that. Other than that, it also didn't heat up. I was expecting these, because they're on ear, to heat up and overheat me, but they didn't. They actually were very, very comfortable. I would say if you're a bigger head person or wider head person and these are clamping you harder, they definitely might. And the thing that might be impacting me is that it's so windy here that I really didn't feel any overheating. So that's super dope, at least from my perspective of trying these out. But these work for working out, which is crazy. The other good thing is that the microphone has some playback control, so it does have play pause, it has previous track, next track, with button clicks, but it doesn't have volume, which that's a big thing. Is I was reaching for my pocket to change volume a lot depending on what the track was, but overall it stayed pretty consistent and I can't complain. It was very pleasurable. Just got to snake that wire around and hide it and make sure it fits in your pocket, and I think it'll run with you. But we'll probably have more input on this. I'll do some weightlifting later this week and see how it performs there. That's where I feel like the wire is going to be a problem, but so far this has been great and definitely could be a really good all-rounder if this keeps up with its performance. So let's continue on the day and see how else I can use these.
So now that I've had a lot more days in terms of listening to this more in depth, hours and hours and hours with a bunch of different genres, I think I can tell you a little bit about what I've noticed from the sound signature. I will say that it's a lot more balanced than the Porta Pros, and it works across genres a little bit better than the Porta Pros. When we went over female vocals on the Porta Pros, they were very underwhelming, and it required an extremely powerful and darker sounding, not darker, just very powerful and just someone with a punch, like Hayley Williams, like just for that to really shine through. It definitely shined through better with EDM. For these KPH30Is, they just work for everybody. They work for everyone's voices if they're singing. They work for females beautifully. They come in very, very crisp. It doesn't matter on if they have more area voices or if they have deeper, sultry voices. It all works really, really well. So I can't complain about them, and they just are a lot more level across the board. Now, when we talk about keys, like let's say like Clyde Lawrence, those keys come in beautifully. They just resolve very nicely. And you just really wouldn't expect this from $30 or $20 now. So it has the same kind of sparkle that the Porta Pros had in terms of instrumentals, but it comes in actually better. It doesn't come in harsh ever, despite it being a little bit brighter and more mid-focused sound signature. And even with the bass, it doesn't get wobbly, it doesn't get out of control, so it doesn't really matter. So if you were watching our live stream the other day, we complained on a few tracks getting sort of out of control with the bass, or just so forward that it swallowed the entire song. For this one, it's just so well produced and well balanced that it just complements everything very nicely. So you don't really lose the punch. It won't hit as hard as the Porta Pros, but you also have just a lot more pleasurable listening experience. That's why I really noticed with, like, let's say My Chemical Romance, it was not overpowering his voice to pound. Like, it didn't matter how strong the drums were or the lead guitar or the bass was, he still resolved really well. I will say that with certain rock songs, the 101 decibels might not punch hard enough, and again, this probably is fine with my computer setup because there's a lot more power behind it, but there might just be some driving issues with my phone or just your phone in general. So for certain songs, you may find yourself wanting a little bit more volume, because I was maxing out on certain songs, but overall it sounds great still. You just may want like a tinge higher, which you can get an amp for that anyway, but for the most part, I think you guys will be fine with the dongle. Certain areas where I saw some like weirdness out of it was really on the side of rap. It was still very, very good for rap. Most things were really nice. Just certain people's voices, and it's probably because I've just listened to them a lot, they just didn't come with that sort of
power and swag that I'm used to. J. Cole's voice on Workout is a good example of that. It just didn't come in as confident. It almost brought out some feebleness in his voice. It just sounded a little bit emaciated, so I couldn't vibe with it as strong. But it still sounded good overall as a track. It's just that his voice isn't as distinctive, and his rapping style is very distinctive and lyrical and all these sort of things that people like really feel it. I just didn't feel that same vibe when I was listening to his music through these headphones. But overall, it works. And I think that you guys will find a lot if you want something a little bit more balanced, a little bit more treble and mid focused, and something that will just work for everything. So I think you're going to get a lot of great sound out of this, and I want to show you guys this myself. However, I'm stupid and I didn't record any sound samples using my binaural microphone when I was in Boston. Since I'm gone and it's going to be way too hard to get a binaural microphone on the fly, I'm going to MacGyver some shit together using paper cups, the magnetic mounts from the DJI, so I will be putting these microphones on these tripods, and then I'm going to encapsulate the cup, and then I'm going to dampen out the sound so it doesn't overly echo with tissue papers to make a binaural microphone. I don't know how this is going to work, but let's go to a montage to see how I built this. What do you think of my contraption?
This is what we call rubbish.
Watch it work. Watch it work.
Won't you keep running away from me? Won't you keep running away from me? Running away from me.
Try these headphones with weights and see if there's any issue. Obviously, the cardio session didn't have any issues, but maybe with the wire, I don't know. For the weight session, I wanted to do a pull day since I thought that the wire and ear cups might get in the way, but surprisingly, they weren't an issue. The ear cups did hit my shoulders a bit when doing overhead or hanging exercises, but nothing uncomfortable or annoying. Just like the outdoor workout, foam placement was the biggest struggle, especially if you're going to do a lot of hip hinge workouts. But for me, the back pocket worked most of the time with my shorts, but again, looser fitting clothes might be an issue here. I think if you're doing more dynamic motions, the armband holder is probably your best bet here. In terms of isolation, I think it did a good job about blocking out most noises in the gym, things like music and other like white noise, sort of stuff from like the air conditioning. However, the things that did come up were obviously people talking within the gym, especially if they had a higher voice, as well as things like the treadmill, which had like a high rotational speed sort of sound coming to it, just because people were running relatively fast that morning. Those are the sounds that came in. But otherwise, I was pretty locked into my workout and didn't really notice the things around me. I will say that I got an overheating sensation towards the end of my workout, which sort of surprised me because outdoors I had really had no issue. I will say that the Four Seasons was kind of stingy on the air conditioning that day in terms of the gym, and it was pretty noticeable, so that might have contributed to the sensation I was having. But I think just doing a little bit more leg day with heavier weights, I built up a little bit more heat than the HIIT sessions I was doing outdoors, so that might have contributed to that, but I did feel some overheating that I did not expect. Overall, I think that these work for any sort of workout scenario. The biggest thing is just making sure that you have a good fit for your phone, make sure it's steady, as well as that you can snake the cable in the right area so it stays out of the way. Overall, I had no big issues and I really enjoyed working out with these, and I might do that more often, especially if I want to listen to more quality music. So I love that this ended up being a lot more versatile than I wanted. But let's talk a little bit more about non-music things. So as I wrap up my hotel time, I did want to talk about editing, movies, video games, things that you might also use these headphones for, just so that it's sort of well-rounded in terms of the sound signature. Because of its neutral nature, it'll never offend you in any sort of spectrum of who's talking or what. Especially when I was talking about before in anime, I did throw some action animes on there, like Bleach and things like that, and it was fine because there's enough dynamic things going on, there's a lot of action noises, there's a lot of music that helps blend it over really well, and in those instances, the voices tend to come out because they do need to overpower and come through over the action and music. So I think for those ones, it's just mixed well for these headphones. However, if you're talking things more spoken word, so, like Nick Wright or Phoenix Wright, or just even podcasts and people talking on YouTube, I think that's where you're starting to notice the lack of power or just a little bit thinness in their voice that is just not usually there with either like in-ear buds or closed back headphones or just over-ear headphones in general. Because with those YouTubers, they generally use some nice condenser mics, some cardioid mics that have some nice grain and texture and clarity to them that just might not be there with these headphones. And I definitely know some of those just like the Electro voice that I have makes my voice sound deeper and more full. That's where I did not feel that with these headphones. So if you are doing a lot of spoken word, that's something to keep in mind. But things for like action, video games, things like that, where the blending of it is a little bit better and it's not as isolated on the voice, I think that will work fine. So I did want to make sure that you guys got a perspective, because I know people use their headphones for all different use cases. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of what you're going to get out of these from a non-music perspective. Anyway, I need to pack up this room and stuff like that, but when I'm back at my hometown, not just Seattle, I will wrap up and talk about recommendations here. Alright, so I just got back from an 8-hour hike, but more on that in a later video. But essentially with these KPH30Is, you guys have heard me talk about this for the last 20 minutes, and you should know what my recommendation is. These guys are a great value, but also just a great set of headphones for your audio needs. But I can say beyond your audio needs. This will work great for movies. This will work great for games. Again, this works really good for working out too. In fact, I'd use these over a lot of the ANC headphones that I have because they won't heat up and they still give me enough isolation where I can lock into my workout while not having the sweat there and still having the situational awareness that I usually have for transparency with those headphones. The best part of these are only $20, so if I accidentally slam a weight on them or they get damaged in my bag because I threw them in there haphazardly, I can easily replace them. So super high value prop there, and the fact that they have such great audio with a nice sound stage that I don't get with some of those headphones, and they're at a fraction of the price. It's just amazing. So Koss did a bang up job with these, and I can't recommend these enough. Almost almost no risk for you guys to actually try these at the price point that they're at. So definitely pick yourself up a pair just to try it. Even if you don't know if you want wired headphones or not, just pick up a pair. You guys will be very happy. It's gonna be fun to play with, and they have a bunch of cool different sounds. The thing that I will say is that there is a earpad mod that I'm going to try in a later video. So we're gonna see if that improves the sound, but I'm definitely gonna try it out. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, you know, if you liked what you saw, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, doing all the things that you normally do in a video that you like and love. And please let me know if you guys like this more handheld style, a little bit more on the cuff sort of shooting. I probably have to do this every now and then because of my travels, but you know, if you want to see this just more often, I'll definitely do that. If you don't, I'll be doing, you know, my regular, more professional, like sort of measured shooting regularly anyway. But this is just something I can add to the mix in terms of getting a variety of shots. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of this format. And yeah, as always, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for 1500. I will definitely do something to commemorate that portion, but thank you guys so much for all the support. I love that you guys are still checking in with my small channel, and yeah, you know, like I say, as always, appreciate you guys. Later.